Time does not flow in the desert. It congeals, turning into a heavy, thick, suffocating glass under the relentless and unblinking gaze of the one who once decided to become the sun itself. We're used to thinking of history as a straight, predictable line, but here, on the eastern bank of the Nile, it has become a circle, a scorched mark left forever in the shifting sands. Before his arrival, we possessed the blessed and sacred coolness of shadows. We knew the names of 1,000 gods, and each of them whispered their own peculiar, ancient consolation from the deep, incense-laden darkness of the temples. We lived in a world of half-tones, of whispers, and of sacred mysteries. A world where gods wore the heads of beasts and men held the sacred right to secrecy, to doubt, and to a private silence of the soul. In Thebes, the air smelled of river water, wet clay, and antiquity. The priests of Amun guarded the balance of the world in quiet stone halls where no unbidden noise could ever penetrate.
But then he came, and he commanded the sky to strip itself bare. Amenhotep IV did not merely change his crown, he altered the very essence of human existence. He wiped away the old world like morning dust from the face of the earth. In a heartbeat, Amenhotep vanished, and Akhenaten was born, the spirit of the Aten. He declared a total war on the twilight. He summoned a city from the scorched earth, where previously there had been only sun-baked stone and the lonely, haunting cry of a desert vulture.
He built a city where God was not an idol of cedar, nor a statue of cold basalt, nor a golden calf to be touched. It was pure, merciless, absolute radiance. Akhenaten, the horizon of the disk, a city conjured from the dunes by the first word of a fanatic, a man possessed by a celestial obsession that burned brighter than the midday heat. Imagine the sheer, impossible scale of it. Within a few short years, a metropolis of dazzling white limestone rose from the void. There were no narrow, crooked streets of the old world here. There were no dark alleys to hide one's sins or sorrows. Only wide, grand avenues flooded with blinding radiance, and temples that possessed no roofs. Akhenaten considered it a sacrilege to hide the sky from its only sovereign. Every single brick laid in this city was saturated with this new, terrifying clarity. Every stone was an offering to the light that refused to set. Look closely at his face upon these ancient, weathered reliefs. Is this truly the face of a man born of woman? These elongated features, these full, almost feminine lips frozen in an eternal, ecstatic hymn. He did not simply wish to be different from his ancestors. He sought to transcend the human form entirely and become the light itself. His body in the carvings is deformed, his belly rounded like the earth, his limbs thin and serpentine. It was a manifesto written in flesh. I no longer belong to your kind. I am a beam of light, given a temporary, fragile form. Beside him always was she, Nefertiti. The beautiful one has come. Her flawless, obsidian-carved profile became the measure of harmony for an entire epoch. In el-Amarna, she was not merely a queen, she was the co-regent of the radiance. They appeared before the people on the high balcony of manifestations, showering their subjects with golden collars that glinted like falling stars. In those moments, it seemed as if heaven itself had descended to touch the dust. They did not just rule us, they blinded us with their magnificence. In the city of Akhetaten, there were no secrets. Light penetrated beneath the skin, into the very marrow of our bones. The walls of the houses were intentionally low, and the temples were hollow shells of stone, so that nothing, not a single leaf or a single thought, stood between a man and his God. We believed that this high noon would never end. We believed we were the first generation of humans in history to look God in the face and not perish instantly. We were breathless with this ecstasy, bathing in the rays of the Akhetaten that reached out to us with millions of tiny golden hands. We were drunk on this clarity, intoxicated by the feeling that the absolute truth had finally been found, and that it was blindingly, perfectly white. We surrendered our past, our names, and our traditions to the fire of his vision. We thought we were being reborn in the light, never realizing we were merely being consumed by it. But the sun does not only grant life, it knows how to kill. It knows how to cauterize memory, turning a multifaceted, vibrant history into uniform, suffocating gray ash. When high noon lasts for years, the eyes begin to bleed, the mind begins to wither. El-Amarna was no paradise, despite what the hymns promised. It became a beautiful, gleaming cage of blistering limestone. While Akhenaten sat in his private, shaded chambers composing the great hymn to the Aten, in the dusty, desperate outskirts of the city, thousands of laborers were choking on lime dust. We found their bones 3,000 years later, tiny, fragile skeletons bearing the marks of backbreaking labor, chronic malnutrition, and a pervasive, bone-deep fear. The price of utopia is never paid by the visionary. It is always written in the blood and sweat of those who are forced to build it. We watched in silence as Akhenaten's faith curdled into a harrowing, narrow obsession. He locked himself within his horizon, ignoring the muffled, desperate groans of an empire in steady decay. While the Hittites seized our northern lands and loyal vassals pleaded for aid in their clay letters, the king was preoccupied with the finer points of solar theology. He was debating the nature of light while his world was beginning to burn. The el-Amarna letters, this archive of ancient desperation, still hold the echoes of cries for help that were never answered. "My lord, the enemies are at the gates. The cities are falling. Send help." But the king was busy with the light. He had no concern for the dust, the bronze, and the blood on the distant, crumbling borders. He had transcended the world, leaving his people behind in the shadows he claimed to have destroyed. And then, in the heavy silence of the ancient abandoned temples, the sound of chisels began. The servants of the Heretic King launched the Great Purge. They bit into the stone with iron and spite, fiercely gouging out the name of Amun wherever it was found. We stood by and watched as they scraped away the names of our fathers and grandfathers, as if washing away an old, stubborn stain. It was a war against the dead. We betrayed our ancestors, leaving them nameless and wandering in the cold afterlife, stripping them of their eternity just to appease the one who never closed his single, fiery eye in the sky. It was spiritual plunder, sanctioned from the throne, a systematic erasure of the soul of a nation. They thought that by killing the names of the gods, they could make their own god live forever. But the Absolute does not tolerate life. It demands only total, mindless obedience. We became ghosts in our own streets. In the city where shadows were forbidden, the deepest, darkest fear was born. It was not a fear of the dark, but a fear of the light. The fear of a face that stares at you from every wall. The fear of a truth that leaves you no room for a single doubt, a single solitary mistake, or a single human breath. The great dream of a single god turned into a sacred, hollow hunger. The cities of Egypt emptied, the treasury bled dry to pay for more white stone. But in the palace of Akhetaten, they continued to sing. They sang endless, repetitive odes about the love of the great sun, while the people starved. It was a feast in the midst of a total eclipse of the soul. The divine light had become a refined, exquisite torture, for it shone even through tightly closed eyelids. And then the twilight came. The very twilight that Akhenaten had tried so desperately to banish with his royal decrees. His death was quiet, occurring in the heat of the summer, but its consequences were deafening. When his heart, exhausted by the weight of its own impossible vision, finally stopped, the city died in its wake almost instantly. It was as if the breath had been sucked out of the valley. Akhetaten did not perish by the sword of an invader or the sudden flames of a fire. It perished from a sudden, staggering silence. As soon as the king was gone, the spell was broken. We fled from that place as quickly as we had once arrived, leaving the horizon to the mercy of the indifferent sand and the hungry desert winds. We did not look back. We ran toward the shadows we had missed for so long. We returned to our old gods, to the cool, dark, comforting halls of Karnak, and to the names that had been forbidden for 13 long, weary years. We tried to forget him as one tries to forget a heavy, debilitating fever. We smashed his statues into 1,000 jagged, unrecognizable shards. We meticulously struck his name from every list of kings, every papyrus, and every stone. For official history, he ceased to exist. He became merely the enemy, a phantom that had to be exorcised from the memory of the living. Today, only the wind reigns over Amarna. It lazily drives the sand across the broken, scorched pavements where the feet of Nefertiti once trod. Shards of white stone, the hollow, empty sockets of abandoned palaces, and a silence that not even the cry of a hawk can break. The sand proved to be the best and most just judge. It swallowed everything: the madness of the king, the prayers of the terrified priests, and the gold of the shining discs. It turned his empire of light into a graveyard of dust. We look at these ruins now and see our own reflection staring back. We are still searching for that one universal truth that will explain the entire universe to us in a single stroke. We are still building our shining cities of pure light, forgetting every time that without shadow, we lose our volume. Without darkness, we lose our depth. Tell me now, is any idea worth burning the world to its foundation? Or are shadows all that actually make us human, separating us from the cold, terrifying perfection of the gods? The sun has set. The names are erased. The desert has won. And in that victory lies our only real lesson.